I didn't die heroically, not even beautifully. Just rain, an empty street, and one bitter thought: so what was the point of my life? Neon bled across the pavement like some cheap halo, rippling in the black film of water that had swallowed the curb. I stood there with my collar up and my knuckles white around a bottle I couldn't afford. My name is Elias Rain, and 2 hours earlier I learned my girlfriend and my best friend were engaged, over champagne apparently, and my stolen design. Funny, the things a city remembers. The scent of wet asphalt, the humming of a traffic light stuck on red. My hands still smelled like graphite and coffee, the permanent ink of late nights no one paid for. 7 years of building toward one project, Harbor Line Tower, my dream in steel and glass, lifted right out of my chest and pinned to theirs like a corsage. Congratulations, I had texted. You found the easiest way to collaborate with theft. They didn't reply. Cowards rarely do. Down on River Street the signage flickered: noodle shop, pawn store, a pharmacy window full of promises no one believed. I tilted the bottle. Whiskey scalded my tongue and blossomed in my ribs. I could hear my professor's voice. Genius is just survival with taste. I'd survived plenty. The taste? I wasn't so sure. I kept walking because there was nowhere else to go. Every step pressed water through the seams of my shoes. My mind kept unspooling. The meeting where investors smiled at me and then at him. The way she cut her eyes to the side guiltily, like she'd already packed her suitcase with my hard drive. The email trail I hadn't protected. The NDA they'd shredded with charm. I laughed once, sharp enough to hurt my throat. A stray cat bolted from a trash can. A flash of wet black. The city didn't even pretend to look away. A bus hissed past, brakes squealing, body shuddering. Somewhere behind me, a car door slammed. Then a curse. Rain threaded the brim of my cap and ran down my temple into my eye. I blinked, and the street became a watercolor, edges dissolving, colors running. This is the part in stories where someone decides to be better, to fight, to sue, to forgive. I tried the thought on like a stranger's coat. It didn't fit. They took everything. What was left to protect? I tossed the bottle at the gutter. It broke in polite, apologetic glass. There was a horn, a white bloom of headlights, the squeal of tired tires trying not to remember me. Impact is not a sound, it's a sudden subtraction. One instant of weight, and then none. I felt air slam out of me, a hot, startled rush. Then there was the high, thin ringing of nothing. Street, neon, rain, me. And then, the world removed my name from its ledger. Silence, as clean as a new page. I woke to the smell of dust and detergent. Sunlight, thin, bleached, too honest, sifted through blinds that didn't quite close. My ceiling had a crack like a river delta. My pillow was lumpy with ghost feathers. My mouth tasted like someone else's night. I was on my back, breathing fast and shallow, hands fisted in a blanket that was older than my pride. For a long time, I just listened. Outside, bikes snapping over potholes, a vendor yelling about hot dumplings, a kid laughing like he'd discovered oxygen. Inside, the small stubborn buzz of a cheap fridge, pipes clicking in the wall. My own pulse calibrating to a body that felt wrong, younger. I sat up too fast. The room swam back. My knees didn't ache. My shoulder, wrecked last year by a fall on site, was smooth and quiet. I pressed fingers to my jaw, no stubble yet. My hands were thinner, the tendons more visible, the little scar near my thumb, still pink from an accident with an X-Acto knife during sophomore studio. A light blue flip phone sat on the nightstand like a prop. I reached for it. The hinge squeaked. The screen was scratched and stubborn, the pixels doing that grainy dance only early 2000 seconds tech can do. No messages. The date slapped me. 7 years earlier. I laughed again, softer this time. It sounded like disbelief had learned manners. My apartment, the old apartment, was smaller than my memory and somehow bigger than my courage. The cheap laminate floor. The poster of Le Corbusier thumbtacked crooked above a desk made from a door on 2 crates. The desk lamp with a burn mark from that night I fell asleep rendering, and tried to set the place on fire. I stood, and my legs obeyed like we'd never argued. The mirror over the sink held a boy trying to impersonate a man. No lines around the eyes yet. No tired parentheses at my mouth. I touched the glass. It touched back. Cool and astonished. A laugh, not mine, rolled out of the room like a coin. It wasn't loud. It was amused the way thunder can be amused. Low, indulgent, inevitable. The light in the corner seemed to thicken, then slide, like ink finding a lower shelf. Shadows gathered where shadows shouldn't, folding themselves into the suggestion of a chair. And in it, as if the chair had been waiting for him, a man sat with one ankle resting on his knee, as at home as if he owned the deed to my heir. He was tall in that complicated way, angles built on grace, like a statue remembered and improved. Dark hair, damp at the ends, as if he'd stepped out of rain that hadn't bothered to touch him. A mouth shaped for polite lies. Eyes, no, not red exactly. More like the brown of burnt sugar lit from behind, catching filaments of crimson when he tilted his head. He smiled. It was almost kind. It wasn't. Second chances, he said, voice smooth enough to pour. Do you like the taste? My throat stuck. Who? Let's call me Asher. He tipped an invisible hat. It keeps introductions tidy. Are you? I gestured at him, then at the corners throbbed with shadow. Then at my traitorous younger face in the mirror. Real? Asher's gaze traveled the room with lazy curiosity, the taped-up window, the two mugs that both said world's okayest architect, the flip phone sulking in my hand. He looked back at me, and a small heat passed behind his pupils, like a match being considered, and then spared. Real enough, he said, and you are very, very lucky, Elias. He said my name like he'd held it before I had. I swallowed. I died. You did? He looked almost pleased, like a teacher whose student finally admitted the problem. Badly, I might add. Little flair. No theme. Sorry I didn't hire a choreographer, I said, because sarcasm is a cheap shield that fits quickly. Don't apologize. He waved a hand. The shadows in the corner stretched, cat-like. You'll have other opportunities. The room seemed to breathe with us. Somewhere, water ticked in the pipes with the patience of monsoon. I pressed a palm to my chest. My heartbeat was quick but steady. The absence where grief usually lived had been startled and vacant. In its place, a cold, bright thread of impossible. Why am I began. Back? Asher leaned forward, elbows on his knees, palms open like an offer. Because stories hate loose ends. Because the ledgers weren't done with you. Because you wanted it. His mouth curled. Pick your theology. I'm versatile. You did this. Yes. Why? My voice cracked on the edge of the word. Pride flinched, and pretended it hadn't. He considered the question as if I'd asked which wine to drink with a storm. Return on investment, he said lightly. Also, he tilted his head, like he could hear the hum of my thoughts. You're interesting when you break. I'm curious what you do when you don't. A chill ran up my arms, electrical and thin. So this is a dream, I said, aiming for dismissal and landing on hope. It's a contract, Asher said. And it wasn't a threat so much as gravity. Call it a lease on fate. You wanted time. I opened a door. What's the price? Elias, my name again, warm as a hand on the back. You survived architects' clients and studio crits. You know nothing worth building is free. Rain began again outside, soft at first, then thickening, as if the city were erasing the pencil lines of today to sketch a cleaner one. Asher stood. The shadows moved with him, folding their dark like wings they didn't need to show. You can change it, he said. The betrayal, the collapse, the small deaths that made room for the big one. You can be nobody's victim, not even your own, but you will oh what? He smiled, and I felt that same wrong-right tug in my ribs, like something inside me recognized him from 1,000 lives I hadn't lived. Outcomes, he said. Decisions, a favor when I ask for it. A beat, possibly two. I should have laughed. I should have told him to leave, to take his rain-polished words and his impossible eyes and go sell his riddles to someone who still believed in bargains. Instead, I found myself flexing my fingers, like I was remembering how to hold a pencil. How to begin again? Do I get it in writing? I asked because even in shock, architects love paper. Asher's grin flashed, delighted. Oh, Elias, we will make something beautiful together. A drop of water slid from the window frame, caught the light, and fell. Outside, the city inhaled. I nodded. Once. Show me where to sign. The kettle on my tiny stove squealed like it was personally offended by reality. I ignored it. Across my kitchen table, Asher looked like he'd been carved from every bad decision I'd ever made. Dark hair, that ridiculous half-smile, shadows in the corners bowing to him like he paid their rent. He leaned back on two legs of the chair, fingers laced loosely over his stomach, as if this was just a casual breakfast chat and not, apparently, the negotiation of my soul. This is a joke, I said finally, pouring the water over instant coffee like it was a peace offering, some cosmic prank. Next you'll tell me there's a punchline involving my taxes. Asher raised a brow. If this were a joke, Elias, it would involve better lighting and at least one attractive bartender. Thanks, I muttered, sliding into the opposite chair with my chipped mug. Good to know my death qualifies as dark comedy. He studied me the way architects study load-bearing walls, calculating angles, guessing what would crack first. You wanted time back, he said smoothly. I gave it to you. Now you get to decide whether to waste it exactly the same way or not. I blew on my coffee, scalded my tongue anyway. So that's it? Free do-over? Free? Asher's smile sharpened. Oh, Elias, everything costs something. Especially miracles. He explained it like a teacher tired of the syllabus. Change the right things, he said, pacing my cramped linoleum floor like it was a stage. Avoid the choices that broke you the first time. But each adjustment, each time you pull too hard on the threads? He made a snapping motion with elegant fingers. The universe expects balance. I collect it. I frowned. Collect what? Organs? Frequent flyer miles? Consequences. Asher said simply, one favor. When I ask for it, you don't get to refuse. I tried for casual disbelief. That's it? That's it, he agreed, then added with a hint of amusement, though they'd be amazed how creatively people fail even with such simple terms. He leaned on the counter like we were gossiping over tea. Take Samuel, brilliant man, thought he could outsmart his own contract. Changed everything. Married the girl, kept the fortune, avoided the accident, very proud of himself. Until the favor came due, what happened? Asher's grin didn't reach his eyes. He paid it, in screams. I set my mug down carefully. You're terrible at marketing. I tried bargaining anyway, because apparently near death makes you ambitious. Half the favor, I suggested. Or maybe I pay installments? Like a mortgage. Adorable. Asher examined his nails, clearly bored. You think this is optional? Like I'm selling you a car. A very cursed car, I muttered. He ignored me. You get time. You get the chance to be cleverer than fate. In return, I get one request, one moment, one task when I call for it. He looked up, and for a heartbeat the kitchen felt too small for both of us. Refuse, and the life I gave back folds like paper. Along with you. I stared at him. He smiled pleasantly, like a waiter asking about dessert. Later, because I apparently hate myself, I left the apartment to get some air. The rain had paused, the city steaming under street lights. That's when the trio of local geniuses decided I looked like easy money. Wallet. The biggest one grunted, stepping out from the bar's doorway. His breath smelled like someone had murdered a brewery inside him. I sighed. Really? Middle of the street, no creativity, no threatening catchphrase? The second guy shoved me against the wall. My head smacked brick. Shut up and pay. And then Asher was there. One blink he wasn't. The next he leaned casually against the opposite wall, shadows sliding off him like water off oil. Gentlemen, he drawled. Do reconsider. They didn't. Mistake. The air shifted. Not wind. Something denser, heavier, like the street itself held its breath. The shadows under the street lamp thickened, writhing like things alive. One mugger swung at Asher. His fist met nothing but dark, and then his own scream as something unseen twisted his arm backward with a sound like wet rope. The second man bolted. The third fainted, which honestly felt like the wisest choice. Asher never moved. "Humans," he murmured, almost fondly, as the darkness released the whimpering idiot and slithered back to where shadows belonged. "So fragile." I gaped. "You could have done that before my head met the wall." "Could have," he agreed. "But then you wouldn't believe me about the rules." Back at my apartment, adrenaline buzzing, I stared at the page Asher produced from nowhere. It wasn't paper so much as darkness pretending to be paper. Words crawling faintly across it like silverfish. "This is insane," I muttered. "Correct," Asher said. "Sign." I scanned the text, though half of it looked like legalese written by poets on opium. "What happens if I break it?" "You won't." "And if I do?" He smiled faintly. "Then you'll learn new definitions of regret." The pen appeared in my hand without asking permission. "Last chance to tell me this is a pyramid scheme," I said. Asher leaned against the wall, arms folded, every inch the patient devil. "Elias, everything in life is a pyramid scheme. Sign." So I did. My name burned across the page in light that wasn't light, then sank like a stone into water. The contract vanished. Somewhere faintly something laughed. Asher straightened, satisfaction flickering like heat behind his eyes. "Congratulations," he said. "You now officially owe me." "Fantastic," I muttered. "Do I at least get a loyalty card?" He smiled that too sharp smile. "Oh, Elias, you'll find I'm very loyal." And the way he said it made my pulse trip over itself in a way that had nothing to do with fear. The campus looked exactly the same, red brick sweating in the autumn sun, banners flapping about alumni, donations, that pretentious fountain. Some student group thought symbolized knowledge flowing freely. Mostly it just attracted pigeons. 7 years ago, I'd walked these paths carrying blueprints and hope. Now I carried memory like a loaded gun. I spotted them near the library steps. Clara and Marcus. Clara, with her perfect hair and perfect smile, and that tilt of the head that made professors melt like butter on asphalt. Marcus, all charm and confidence, the kind of guy who fist-bumped janitors and CEOs with the same grin. They hadn't ruined me yet. Not publicly. Not spectacularly. That would come later, when my designs made headlines under their names. When investors ghosted me because I looked unstable screaming about intellectual theft. When Clara texted, "It's not what you think," while wearing Marcus's ring. Now they stood there waving like old friends. "Play along," I told myself. "Smile like you don't know the punchline." "Elias." Marcus clapped me on the shoulder, like we'd survived war together. "Man, where have you been hiding?" "Under a rock," I said pleasantly. "Lots of shade. Very exclusive." Clara laughed that little laugh, the one that used to hook under my ribs and tug. "You look good," she said, eyes sweeping my face like she was inspecting real estate. "Really good." "Practice makes perfect," I thought bitterly. Aloud, I said, "Dying will do that to you." They chuckled, assuming it was a joke. We made small talk. Classes. Projects. The upcoming design competition. Marcus totally thought we should enter together. I remembered entering alone last time. I remembered losing because my presentation files mysteriously corrupted the night before, while Marcus submitted my backup under his name. Now I smiled, sipping from a vending machine coffee that tasted like regret. "Sure," I said lightly. "Let's collaborate." What could possibly go wrong? Marcus beamed, clueless. Clara touched my arm, all warmth and fake concern. "We've missed you," she murmured. My new sense, the one Asher had unlocked, thrummed like a tuning fork. A faint glow around their words, sharp red at the edges. Lies, both of them. I almost laughed. Asher leaned against a nearby lamppost, blending in like sin at Sunday school. Students passed without noticing the faint shadow crawl around his boots. They're lying, I thought. Obviously. Asher's voice slid through my head like smoke. Do keep up, Elias. Can they hear you? He smirked faintly. Only if you want them to. Now, try something. A nudge. Like this. A ripple moved through me, subtle as breath. Marcus suddenly fumbled his coffee, swearing as it sloshed across his shirt. I blinked. Did I do that? Asher's smile curved. A little illusion. A suggestion. They see what you want for a second or two. Nothing lasting. Not yet. Clara handed Marcus tissues, fussing. I tried another thought. Trip on the stairs. Marcus's foot slid on nothing. He windmilled. Cursed again, barely catching the rail. I bit back a grin. Oh, this is dangerous. Delicious, isn't it? Asher's eyes gleamed. Careful though. Power is a spice. Too much ruins the dish. We ended up walking toward the studio building together. Clara talked about internships. Marcus bragged about some professor's recommendation. I let my new sense sift through every word. Half-truths. Exaggerations. Promises sticky with self-interest. Once, their charm would have worked. Once, I'd have followed Marcus's lead like a rookie soldier behind a decorated captain. Now I watched their expressions the way an architect studies cracks in concrete. So, Marcus said casually, there's this networking dinner Friday. Investors, big names. You should come. Present some ideas. Last time, he'd forgotten to forward me the invitation. Showed up alone with my portfolio. This time, I smiled like a man already sharpening knives. Wouldn't miss it. Near the studio entrance, a group of engineering majors decided the steps were their personal kingdom. 1. A broad-shouldered guy with a buzz cut made a comment about Clara, loud enough for Marcus to bristle, and me to raise an eyebrow. Hey, Buzzcut said as we passed. Smile, sweetheart. I felt heat crawl up my neck. Old habits said keep walking. Asher moved before I did. 1 second he lounged by the bike rack, the next he was in front of Buzzcut, smile lazy, eyes promising something sharp. Apologize, Asher said softly. The guy snorted. Or what? Shadows thickened under the awning. The air smelled faintly of ozone, like lightning holding its breath. Buzzcut paled. Sorry, he muttered. Asher stepped aside with a mock bow, all civility. The shadows retreated like well-trained dogs. Marcus and Clara didn't seem to notice anything except the apology. They probably thought Asher was just intimidating. But I saw the way Buzzcut's hands shook. I looked at Asher, who dusted imaginary lint from his sleeve, utterly unconcerned. Show off, I muttered. He smirked. You're welcome. By the time classes ended, Marcus and Clara had extracted promises about group projects and Friday's dinner. They waved like we were still best friends. I waved back, smile polite, stomach buzzing with something that wasn't quite anger anymore. Opportunity, maybe. Asher appeared beside me as I crossed the quad. No footsteps. Just there. Like my shadow decided it deserved a promotion. They're going to burn you again, he said mildly. Not if I light the match first, I replied. He glanced at me, amused. Careful, Elias. People who think they're holding the strings often discover they're the ones dancing. I met his gaze, feeling that new power hum under my skin like a hive. Maybe. Or, maybe I'm about to outplay everyone. The wind tossed leaves across the pavement like discarded sketches. For a moment I saw my reflection in the library's glass doors, smiling, eyes sharp, shoulders squared. Not a victim this time. Definitely not. The marketplace smelled like frying oil, wet rope, and citrus left too long in the sun. People pressed shoulder to shoulder beneath patched awnings, voices rising in 100 bargaining languages. I trailed after Asher through the chaos, clutching the strap of my bag like it contained my last surviving nerve. Tell me again, I said over the noise, why this errand involves me and not, say, one of your shadow minions. Asher didn't look back. His black coat cut a perfect line through the crowd, the sort of thing fabric shouldn't manage in this humidity. Because you signed the contract, he said, voice light as thread. And because you need the practice. Practice for what? Getting tetanus? He slowed near a fruit stand, plucked an apple without paying, bit into it like theft was seasoning. For surviving the next time someone wants you dead, he said around the bite, which should be, oh, any minute now. I frowned. That was weirdly specific. We reached the far edge of the market where the crowd thinned into stacked crates and rusted fences. I didn't notice the 3 men at first. They blended too well, leather coats despite the heat, eyes sweeping alleys instead of prices. Asher did notice. Of course he did. He sighed like a teacher spotting gum under a desk. Hunters, he murmured. For what? I asked. Asher's smile showed no teeth. The first bolt sang past my ear before I saw the crossbow. It thunked into a crate, spraying splinters. I dove behind a stall stacked with pomegranates. Asher didn't move. He stood there, a black mark on the sunlit street, watching 3 armed men advance like this was theater he hadn't bought tickets for. Contractors, one snarled. Hand over the artifact. I blinked. What artifact? Asher shrugged, almost apologetic. They think you're carrying one. Mortals do love being wrong. Another bolt shattered a jar of pickled something. Vendors screamed and scattered. My heart tried to climb out through my throat. Asher, I shouted. He looked bored. Yes? Do something demonic. The second volley never landed. Shadows rose from the ground like smoke reversed, catching the bolts mid-air, splintering wood with a sound like teeth breaking. The hunters cursed, reloading. Asher finally moved. He didn't rush, he simply appeared closer, the air bending like it preferred him. One hunter swung a knife. Shadows caught his wrist. Another aimed the crossbow. It snapped in half before he pulled the string. The third man turned to run. Shadows coiled around his ankles, gentle as lovers, firm as handcuffs. I gaped from behind my crate. That's new. Asher glanced over his shoulder, trying not to kill them. Growth, you see. The hunters dropped their weapons fast. The shadows slithered back to the ground, vanishing like spilled ink into dirt. Asher strolled toward me, brushing imaginary dust from his sleeve. Unharmed? I stood, legs shaking. Barely. He tilted his head, eyes glinting with something quick and unreadable. Don't get attached, he said softly. That was for the contract. Maybe. His smile curved. Maybe not. Heat crawled up my neck. I told myself it was adrenaline. We left the market before the local guards arrived, climbing a hill above, the city where the ruins of some old watchtower offered shelter. Asher lit a fire with a snap of his fingers. The flames burned pale, as if even fire obeyed him reluctantly. I sat opposite him, arms around my knees, watching sparks escape into the dark. You could have let me die, I said finally. I could have, Asher agreed, poking the fire with a stick he didn't need. So why didn't you? He looked at me across the flames, expression lazy, almost amused. Because you're useful. A pause. And interesting. Great, I snapped. I'm a talking tool. Asher smirked. You talk more than most tools, yes. I glared at the fire. I didn't ask for any of this. You signed, he reminded me. I didn't know the fine print included assassins. That's life, Elias. People want things, other people get in the way. Sometimes crossbows are involved. I threw a pebble into the dark. It clattered off stone, unsatisfying. I don't trust you. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Good. Trust is expensive. Then why save me? The fire cracked between us. Asher leaned back on one elbow, the flames painting his face gold and shadow. Maybe, he said slowly. I wanted to. My chest did something traitorous at those words. I scowled to cover it. You're infuriating. I'm consistent, Asher said. People hate that. I stared at the flames until they blurred. I don't want to belong to anyone, I muttered. You don't, he said lightly. You signed a deal, not a marriage license. I glanced up. Feels the same. That earned me a quiet laugh, low and rough, like stones tumbling together. The fire threw sparks into the night. Behind them, Asher watched me like he could read every thought I was trying too hard to hide. And maybe he could. The motel sign sputtered like it had stage fright, buzzing orange against the rain. Half its letters were dead. That felt about right. Asher pushed the door open with a lazy shoulder, shadows sliding after him like obedient pets. I followed, dripping water across the tile floor, the smell of mildew and cheap disinfectant hitting like a slap. The room had one lamp, one window with blinds that didn't close, and one bed big enough for neither of us to be happy. Asher didn't look fazed. Of course he didn't. "Home sweet dump," he said cheerfully, tossing his coat over a chair whose leg gave a dangerous wobble. I locked the door out of habit, then out of paranoia. "You've stayed here before?" "Several lives ago," he said, checking the window like someone might be out there sharpening knives. "It was worse then." I believed him. Barely. We sat on opposite edges of the bed like strangers on a park bench. The rain thickened outside, hissing across the parking lot. "Asher," I said finally, "those hunters, why do they want you dead so badly?" He tilted his head back, staring at the water-stained ceiling. For a moment I thought he'd deflect with another joke, but his voice came quieter than usual. "Because I'm not supposed to be here," he said. I frowned. "Here as in, this town? This room? As in this plane?" His eyes caught the lamplight, red-brown like rust. "Demons have contracts too, Elias. Some with mortals, some with things older than language. Mine keeps me anchored to the human world, to favors I owe. You can't leave." His smile was thin. "Not until it's done. Not until they collect." Something twisted in my chest, sharp and unwelcome. "They..." Asher shrugged. "Depends who's holding the pen this century." He looked at me then, something unreadable flickering across his face. "Don't waste pity. I signed like you did." "But I didn't know the terms," I said. "Neither did I," he admitted softly. The power flickered once, then gave up entirely. The room fell into shadow, except for the occasional lightning flash slicing through the blinds. I kicked off my wet shoes, glaring at the single sad mattress. "I'm not sharing." Asher stretched out on top of the covers instantly, smug as a cat claiming territory. "Of course not." He folded his arms behind his head. "We'll draw an invisible line, very professional." I grabbed the extra blanket from the closet, threadbare, probably older than both of us, and threw it across the bed between us like a demilitarized zone. The first tug of war started 10 minutes later. "Stop stealing the blanket," I hissed in the dark. "I'm not stealing," Asher murmured, voice velvet and infuriating. "I'm borrowing indefinitely." "You're impossible." "You're cold," he said, yanking more fabric his way. I sat up, hair sticking in every direction. "If hell freezes over tonight, I'm blaming you." Asher chuckled, low and warm. "Darling, hell froze over long before you were born." I nearly choked. "Did you just call me sleep?" he interrupted, sounding far too entertained. The storm kept me awake. That, and the weight of his words about chains and contracts. At some point I asked, softer than I meant to, "Asher, if someone ends your contract, what happens?" He was quiet long enough that I thought he wouldn't answer. "Then, the bond breaks. The anchor goes. I go with it." "Go where?" His eyes glimmered faintly in the dark. "Where all debtors go, when the collector's done waiting." It took me a second. "You mean..." "Yes," he said simply. "Dead, Elias. Properly this time." I gripped the blanket tighter, pulse thudding in my ears. "So if I screw this up, you die." He smiled faintly. "Congratulations. You finally read the fine print." "That's not funny. Most truths aren't." I stared at the ceiling, feeling something heavy settle under my ribs. I hadn't asked for this, any of it. But the thought of Asher simply not existing made my throat close in ways I didn't want to name. It was after midnight when the air changed. One moment rain hammered the roof, the next, silence cracked through it, sharp and unnatural. Asher sat up instantly, eyes narrowing. The door shuddered, like something huge leaned against it. Then the window burst inward, glass spraying across the carpet. The thing that climbed through wasn't human. Wings, once white, now ragged and ash-stained. Eyes glowing with cold fury. A halo cracked down the middle like broken bone. "Seraphim," Asher muttered, voice dropping. Perfect. The creature's gaze swept the room, and landed on him with murder bright as lightning. You've run long enough, Oathbreaker. Asher moved fast, shadows rising around him like armor. Elias, he said without looking at me, run. I couldn't. Not yet. The thing drew a blade of light from nothing, voice like wind through a graveyard. Tonight, demon, your debts come due. And then everything exploded into motion. The abandoned cathedral loomed over the edge of the city like a reprimand carved in stone. Its spires cracked the gray sky, stained glass gaped with missing eyes. Rain clung to the steps as Asher and I climbed them, our shadows stretching long across the nave's shattered floor. The angel waited inside. And we weren't alone. Clara and Marcus stood near the altar. My old friends, my perfect betrayers, hands folded like they owned the place. Their smiles looked rehearsed. Elias, Marcus said, voice echoing through the ruins. We just want to talk. Of course you do, I said, moving closer to Asher. Right before you hand me over to the thing with the wings. Clara's gaze flicked toward Asher, then away, as if looking too long might burn her. It's not personal, she murmured. It never is, Asher said softly, the words like frost. The angel stepped forward. Up close, its wings looked worse. Feathers frayed, bones showing through in places like time itself had gnawed at them. Its voice carried thunder beneath silk. Demon. Oathbreaker. Your debt ends tonight. Light flared along its arm, shaping itself into a blade. Asher didn't move. Always so dramatic, he murmured. The first swing came fast, a streak of radiance splitting the air where his head had been. Asher sidestepped, shadows curling from his coat to catch the next strike mid-swing. The impact cracked the floor like dropped stone. Clara flinched. Marcus stepped back. I didn't move. Because I couldn't. More hunters slipped from the side aisles, men with crossbows, knives, faces I recognized from alleys and bad nights. One aimed for me. Asher's shadow surged before I saw the bolt. It splintered mid-air, shards falling harmlessly at my feet. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. Stay behind me, he said. Lightning carved the ceiling as the angel descended again, each swing shaking the walls. The hunters closed in. I grabbed a broken piece of pew, because bare hands were all I had. My pulse hammered, breath loud in my ears. The fight tore through the nave like a storm given shape. Asher moved with inhuman precision, every gesture pulling darkness like a puppet string. The hunters went down first, crossbows bending, blades shattering, men hurled into columns as if the shadows themselves fought for him. But the angel cut through everything. Its blade of light seared through shadow like fire through cobweb. One swing shattered a pillar, another opened the roof to the rain above. The cathedral groaned, walls splitting, glass raining down like jagged stars. Asher met the next strike head-on. Shadows erupted outward in a tidal wave, slamming the angel across the transept. The altar cracked in two. Half the ceiling came down with a roar. I stumbled back as stone dust filled the air, coughing, ears ringing. When it cleared, Asher stood at the center of ruin, coat whipping in the wind, eyes burning like coals remembered by winter. The angel rose slowly from the rubble, glowing brighter. Stop! My voice tore itself raw. Both of them turned, the angel with judgment in its face, Asher with exhaustion carefully hidden. I didn't think. I just said it. I don't care about the contract, or the debt, or whatever cosmic rulebook you two are quoting. My chest hurt, words shoving themselves out like they'd been locked up too long. My throat closed. Rain slid cold down my neck. I don't want to lose you, I said finally. The angel's expression didn't change. Asher's did. Barely. A flicker, like wind across embers. Elias, he said quietly, almost gently. This isn't your choice. I'm making it mine. Lightning split the sky through the open roof. For one heartbeat, everything froze. The hunters groaning on the floor. Clara pale as marble, Marcus gripping her arm, and Asher looking at me like I was something far more dangerous than the thing with the blade. The angel advanced again. He belongs to the debt, it intoned. Maybe, Asher said softly. Maybe not. The shadows around his feet twisted, curling into shapes that didn't belong to geometry. He straightened, blood running from a cut along his jaw. Smile sharp despite it. "You want the Oathbreaker," he said to the angel. "Fine. But the contract changed when he signed." Its blade paused mid-swing. "This life," Asher continued, "is tied to mine now. Remove me." He nodded toward me. "And you break your own law." "The one about innocent lives?" The angel's eyes burned brighter. Rain hissed across its wings. "Loop. Hole," Asher said slowly, like tasting the words. "You can't collect without collapsing the whole bargain." Silence cracked through the wreckage. Finally, the blade of light lowered an inch. "Another time," the angel said, voice like distant storms. It turned, wings carving air, and vanished into the rain with the surviving hunters stumbling after it. The cathedral groaned around us, half its roof gone, air full of dust and wet stone. Clara and Marcus fled without looking back. I stood there shaking, soaked through, staring at Asher. "You stayed." He wiped blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. "For now." "You could have left." "I could have," he said, meeting my eyes. "Didn't." I didn't know what to say to that. The fire in his gaze softened for just a breath before he turned away, coat trailing shadows across the cracked floor. "Come on, Elias," Asher said, voice rough. "Before the rest of the ceiling decides it hates us too." And for the first time since dying, since waking, since signing anything at all, I didn't feel like running. 3 months later, the sign above my office door read Rain and Company, architecture in clean steel letters. I hadn't added Asher's name, partly because the paperwork for including demons in LLCs was probably a nightmare, but mostly because Asher didn't do names on doors. He did, however, do clients. Or rather, he scared off the ones I didn't want. The man in the beige suit sat across from me in the conference room, droning about budget cuts and simple, boring lines while my sketches waited on the table like racehorses behind a gate. "Minimalist," the man insisted. "Flat roof, white walls, no personality." I opened my mouth to argue, and Asher leaned against the window behind him, arms folded, expression carved from mildly interested predator. The man glanced back once, and then again, slower. Asher smiled in that faint, dangerous way that suggested he knew every sin the man had ever considered committing. On second thought, the client stammered, gathering his briefcase. "I might call later." Much later, the door slammed behind him. I dropped into my chair. "You can't keep scaring them off." "Can't I?" Asher asked, examining his nails. He wanted to build a concrete box with windows. A coffin for accountants. "I did you a favor." "It's hard to pay rent on favors." He shrugged, entirely unrepentant. That night, we climbed to the roof of the office building. The city sprawled below, neon veins, car headlights threading through dark streets. The river catching every fractured bit of light and breaking it again. The air smelled like rain that hadn't decided yet. Asher leaned on the railing, wind tugging at his coat, eyes reflecting the skyline. "You've done well, Elias. Business is good," I admitted. "Even without you terrifying half my clientele." "Half?" He sounded offended. "I'll try harder." I snorted, then fell quiet. The silence between us wasn't awkward anymore. It felt balanced, like we'd built something truer than contracts or threats or second chances. He glanced sideways. "You're thinking very loudly." "I'm thinking you could have left." "I could have," he agreed. "But you didn't." His smile curved slow, like dawn creeping over a horizon. "No." The wind shifted, carrying the smell of rain and asphalt and street food. Asher looked out over the city, voice casual but edged with something softer. "You know," he said, "contracts can be rewritten." I raised a brow. "Pretty sure I signed in Hellfire. Not a lot of amendment clauses in that." "Not as a bargain," he continued, ignoring me. "As a partnership." My throat went tight. "Partnership. 2 parties," Asher said lightly, "equal terms, no traps, no fine print, just choice." I stared at him. "Demons don't do partnerships." He met my gaze, eyes glinting like the city's last street lamp before dawn. Maybe this one does. For a second, the noise of traffic and wind and everything else fell away, leaving only the sound of my own pulse. I tried for sarcasm, because anything else felt like jumping off a building. So what, you want business cards? Asher and Rain? Architectural services and questionable ethics? His grin flashed, sharp and quick. Tempting. You'd scare the zoning board. They deserve it. We both laughed then, the kind that comes easier after surviving collapsing cathedrals and homicidal angels and your own mistakes. The sky cracked open briefly with distant lightning, painting his face silver. For once, he didn't look like the devil at my shoulder. He just looked. Here. I meant it, I said finally, words scraping out like they cost something. Back then. About not wanting to lose you. Asher watched me with that unreadable half-smile. I know. We stayed until the rain started, soft at first, then thicker, sliding across the metal railing and soaking through my collar. Asher didn't move. So, he said over the hiss of water. Partners? I hesitated only long enough to wonder what he wasn't saying, what dangers, what loopholes, what inevitable chaos. Then I nodded. Partners. The words settled between us like a foundation stone. Asher's grin went sharp again, but there was something behind it now. Something warmer. Excellent, he said. Wait until you see the paperwork. I groaned. There's paperwork? Endless, he promised, looking entirely too pleased. We left the roof when the rain turned serious, shadows trailing after him like loyal dogs. At the door he glanced back once, the city lights behind him, the storm curling across the sky like a warning or a blessing. I couldn't tell which. Elias, he said. Yeah? He smiled, faint and knowing. Try not to die again. It complicates things. Then he vanished down the stairs, coat snapping in the wind, leaving me with thunder, rain, and the strangest feeling that my second life had only just started. Because maybe this wasn't about bargains anymore. Maybe it never had been.